was a very, very difficult, dark time, really. And because of work, and that's where you are like, that's not right. That shouldn't be that. I mean, my work is what I like to do, It's I shouldn't associate stuff that are not right for me, that can break my mind.
Hello and welcome. My name is Myriam Catrin. I'm a texture artist in visual effects. Welcome to my podcast. Let's be honest, a life and a career as a working artist can be very fulfilling, but is not for the faint of heart. It's filled with challenges and obstacles, and the path forward is not always clear or simple. On this podcast, we discuss all of this openly and honestly with experienced artists who have already walked that road. That's why I call it the naked texture artist. There are many podcasts that focus on and celebrate all the big achievements in visual effects and animation. But my career as a texture artist has not been one unending victory lap. So personally, I'm more interested in learning how my fellow artists handle the hard things, when things don't work, when things break, or when we're expected to produce the impossible. All of that stuff that takes place behind the curtain. So I invite you to join me on this journey. Hopefully together we can learn from the artists who went before us, save ourselves some scars and some tears, and increase our joy as working artists. Welcome to the Naked Texture Artist.
Just finished one gig. Working again. Oh, it was so lovely. Absolutely lovely. Somehow I've been sort of typecast with Spaceships. But hey, typecasting is just a negative way of viewing expertise. So I don't mind at all. And Spaceships are cool. For me, that wow moment where you go, I want to do this, was seeing that endlessly enormous Star Destroyer passing overhead in the opening scene of Star Wars as a kid. And you know what is even cooler than making Star Wars spaceships? Making spaceships together with NASA. Oh yeah, not gonna lie, I was pinching myself when discussing with the actual engineers from NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs who built the James Webb Space Telescope about my concerns dialing in the correct reflection values and how they vary as the angle of incidence changes in the mylar for the solar shields. That's just surfacing heaven. But now, it's back to the fight. The fight to find the next gig. The fight to keep that flood wave of negative emotion at bay. Man, you feel like you're trying to beat back an avalanche with a ping pong paddle. Without the constant hum of my work, I'm just not the same person. So to straighten out my thoughts and help reset my emotions, I need more experienced voices in my ears to take me out of that headspace. Myriam is just fantastic for this. The funny thing is that this part of the conversation is the reason I sought Myriam out in the first place. For the longest time, I'd been pondering that question, who is the world's best texture artist? I still do. And when I asked other experienced texture artists who had been around the block and worked on some of the most complicated films at some of the biggest studios, Myriam's name would come up. They were talking about this dragon lady. Hey, add in a nickname including a mythical beast, and naturally my curiosity reached a fever pitch. I had to meet this person. Myriam's talents and abilities are unquestionable, but so is her humanity. Even an artist as accomplished, experienced, and capable as her is not made of steel or invulnerable to the waves of madness and chaos that buffets us in visual effects. This is the naked texture artist after all, and we end up talking about a period in Myriam's life which was clearly quite painful and destructive for her. Funny that what can sustain us and what can heal us can also poison us. Myriam, like I said, whom several very respected texture artists pointed out to me as the world's best texture artist, it is remarkable to hear her emotional and mental health story. We may be able to perform small miracles on screen, but we are still not made of stone or immune to abuse or hardships. This should never be forgotten nor taken for granted. Not by our supervisors or our peers, but also not by ourselves.
Have you ever been discriminated against in your work?
No, never. Never. Sorry, that's true. So that's why I can't really
That's okay.
talk.
Good for you.
Or maybe I was, but I didn't realize, so I didn't care. So maybe I was, I don't know. I think also in texture it's more forgiving because it's a discipline which is more democratic. You know, you have as much as women as you have men in texture, like opposite to a lot of other departments, for example.
Really? You think there's a different split of men versus women in texture or in other departments?
Not in, I mean, for a while, for a while, yes.
Which department has the most women, would you say? Compositing?
Production.
Yes, you're right. Production. Yeah, you're right. Production, actually.
Production is the one that you have like more women than you have men, that's for sure. You have very few men in production. But also, I feel like FX, it's really like a boys' game.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of, I know one female effects artist, but that's not many. I know 20, 30.
I know one.
Yeah.
The same. She's French. Yay! But in Weta, for example, there is no VFX supervisor female, for example. I don't remember that in Framestore there is, or I didn't meet her. But VFX supervisor, it's male, essentially. Essentially male. At least in the company I was like ILM was really the one where I saw like Jean Bolt, like women who are actually supervisor.
I'm thinking, we were talking about before, good supervisors. There are not that many of them. I'm thinking I've probably had 3 good supervisors over my entire career, which is not a lot. And of those, one, I want to say 1.5 2 of them were women.
One of them is a woman, yeah. And she's my mentor, actually. For all the year I work in France, she was the main person. She gave me so many good advice. Really,
that's fantastic when you can find someone like that.
Yeah, and so Jean, but she was supervisor texture, not a VFX supervisor. Eve, she was a VFX supervisor, and otherwise, there is one great supervisor in Weta that I really love working with him because he's an artist also. He's painting. He's a genius. This guy is a genius. He was a HOD in shader for many years. Like the guy is like writing shaders and everything like this. Is the person that make me also like the same thing. He make me jump a level, in terms of like thinking shader and everything. Give me tools, to work. So that was.
How did he do that?
Because we were working on the trilobite.
Yeah.
And we were working on the weekend, and he loved coming to our room. We were two texture artists working on two different. One was working on the engineer.
Yeah.
At the beginning, sequence of the
Yeah,
beginning.
of course, yes.
And I was working on the trilobite, and Martin loved coming to work with us. So he took one of the computers there and was like checking stuff and everything like this. And sometimes I was like, Martin, like, can you have a look like how I can do that and everything with the teeth on it? And he was like, oh, so there is this co-shader that I wrote a long time ago, but we can try. And he was such a empowering supervisor because we were working, closely. It was not like on his chair at the end of a table watching the shots of a big screen with everybody taking notes and everything like this. He was really closer to us. He was working with us basically.
I'm pretty certain that Myriam here is referring to visual effects supervisor Martin Hill, who in addition to all these wonderful qualities is also a genius potter. No joke. Check out his amazing work on martinhillceramics.com. I'll leave a link in the description of this episode. It's the kind of stuff that just makes you go, why don't I work with physical media? This anecdote about Myriam's supervisor getting his hands dirty with the team, and not just supervising from the end of a conference room table, it reminded me of something Steve Walton told me. Brief recap, because of course every episode of The Naked Texture Artist somehow turns into the Steve Walton fan club, as well as the Gene Bolte Appreciation Hour. Steve Walton painted the textures for the seminal Davy Jones character in Pirates of the Caribbean. I dare you find a better executed humanoid character in cinema history. I'll wait. Steve was also my lead at ILM for 5 minutes. Steve talked about how John Knoll, a much more widely known, if not outright famous ILM powerhouse, was the visual effects supervisor on Pirates of the Caribbean. A man of many talents, John Knoll also created Photoshop together with his brother Thomas. One day when he was doing rounds and Steve was struggling with something, John just asked if he could have a go. So he just sat down at Steve's workstation and fixed the problem with a few clicks in Photoshop. There really is something to be said for supervisors with deep knowledge of the involved disciplines and the willingness to get their hands dirty.
And so I learned so much, and he has a great eye.
And also a humble attitude or approachable attitude.
Yeah.
Because
but he's an artist, so he's an artist also. He's a musician, he do ceramic stuff, he paint, he draws super well, and he has his brain mathematics. I mean, he's the most complete person I ever met. And that's the thing, he has this whole question about artists that we just spoke about, like all this question and everything. It makes him so humble and so, grounded.
This reminds me of one of the most famous Japanese painters of all time, Hokusai. Maybe you know his name, but you definitely know his paintings. The beautiful wave with the Mount Fuji in the background. And he lived to be 85 years old or something like that. And when he was 80 years old, he was saying, if only heaven will grant me 5 more years to live in, maybe I can become a real artist. At this point, he was already one of the greatest masters the world has already seen. But that humility,
Yes, exactly. That's with this kind of artist. And there is another Chinese artist a long time ago that was very well known to draw. Every morning he was drawing a tiger in one go. And sometimes the tiger was a fail, but he was not redoing it because you have to accept that sometimes you fail. And he lived a very long life, and he has like a full drawers full of the one tiger drawing, and he was keeping everything because you have to keep also where you fail.
This is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art.
Exactly, that's so sensitive to that because it was like, so that's the thing. You have the humility of accepting that you have to fail to succeed sometimes. That's how it works, And the journey is more important than the real goal, basically. That's the journey that bring you there, make you happy. And I suppose Martin is one of these person who do journey, like he's doing a journey and he just want to enjoy, human connection.
That's a special person, for sure. Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, seriously, and we are super lucky to have him in Weta. He was the one who supervised the Weta part of Game of Thrones for the last season.
Okay.
It's a very special person to do that.
Oh, there were more dragons in that one, in Game of Thrones. Did you have a chance to work on any of them? No? I don't think I saw Game of Thrones on your resume.
No Game of Thrones, no Game of Thrones. I admire them. I love them. I find that so beautiful and so well thought also.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of like, oh shit, we should have done that on smoke. But yeah.
Yeah.
But I enjoy them by themselves, not I wish I had.
If you could go back again, would you still have picked texture work? When you're looking at all the different disciplines in the work that we do, or I don't know, maybe you would have taken a different path, screenwriter or cinematographer, or would you still have done texture work again?
Yes, I think yes, but a little more global. I think that I will take the time to learn more about modeling and to be a little more generalist. To learn about like lighting and modeling, not really to insist on that, to be a generalist person. More generalist. Because here it's like I'm more specialized. So that's yeah. It's more and more specialized, and somehow I
You feel you're missing something by not having the complete picture.
Yeah, I thought that basically when I was in France for many years, as we have like movies that are not the kind of budget that we have anywhere else. You were always a small team, so you were a little more doing a little bit of everything, And I was compositor, so I did a lot of framing and I did a lot of things, animation, FX, matte painting, because compositors, that's what they will expect you to do, like to do a full, you were in charge of of one shot or a sequence, not one part of the thing. So I miss a little bit that. I miss a little bit like to lose a connection with the camera.
So thinking more in terms of the finished images instead of an asset or a detail of a
framing, ambience, all these things that we are doing in comp, basically.
Yeah.
But I don't regret at all, like the fact that I moved from comp, because it was very organic. I didn't move from suddenly to texture. It was, bit by bit, basically. It was really like, at the beginning, they say, hey, we can't start comp yet. Can you do a matte painting? Can you go in matte painting? And after it was like, well, we have to do this camera projection for this kind of set. Can you do the camera projection? So that means that you have to texture and do everything, blah, blah, blah. And gradually I moved to comp to really do texture. It was really gradual. But again, because in France it's really mixed, you are the artist of the team. So you do texture, you do matte painting, you do logo, you do like a lot of stuff, basically.
That is interesting because I think we can both agree that, let's say, if you just do one type of assets day in and day out, it gets very repetitive. It gets very boring very quickly.
Yes.
To have those fresh challenges all the time.
Yes, it makes you. That's the thing, is that I was kind of trained to think on the spot, to think fast and on the spot, to find way of doing a trick, basically. So it's very useful in texture because I still have this way of thinking, and it's not only very useful, but actually it's kind of my trick for the in texture is that I can think quick on the spot of what to do to attract the eye or something like this. But it based on all these years or 14 years of doing a little bit of everything, and very quickly because you have 4 hours to do something like or half a day. You're like, oh, okay,
Ah,
Photoshop.
oh boy. You talked about how your supervisor there, he sort of helped you jump a big step forward in your artistic development or in your development as a texture artist by understanding the shaders and all of this. Have there been any other points in your career where you can look back and you see that instead of going sort of gradually a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, that you have taken such big jumps or bigger jumps forward in your career? Or in your understanding of the work or your skill level or some other things that maybe just unlocked something that then you could progress quickly for a time?
Yes, but I have to say that it's when I learn a new tool,
Okay.
Mari was, for example, a big jump for me as a texture artist. It was extraordinary jump.
Of course.
Suddenly when whoa, awesome. I don't have to paint everything and project it and then bake it and then put it in Photoshop and then it's like it was so complicated to do texture before, but we were doing it like because there is no other way. So yeah, that was okay. Like when I learned Mari, well, it's always like being a tool, a new software that I learned that after I'm like, this is awesome. I want to do that all my life, basically.
What do you think, if you're looking 5 years or a couple of years forward in our work, texture artist, what will the changes be? Do you see any big changes coming on the horizon? Like new tools or new technical developments that will increase our speed and quality? Or
When we're talking about developments in texture tools and so on, please bear in mind that this conversation took place in February 2021.
Well, you have a substance painter, which is gaining some momentum right now. It's a very different way of working than with Mari, and I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with this one. Apart doing, for example, environment, because it's you are not really painting.
no.
You use different materials.
You're painting with materials.
Exactly, which is also
And it's not so much painting with materials, you're masking with material.
exactly. And I like that, but I feel like that we are kind of like leveling everybody to the same level. You know what I mean? You have no way of doing something great. It will be realistic, cool, but who cares?
Well,
Basically.
well, there is a market for that as well. All the background buildings.
Exactly. No, totally. That's to do this kind of stuff and everything like this. I'm very happy with this kind of working. I think like now also you have all the stuff of Megascan that arrive and basically it won't be needed to do texture anymore and creative texture. So we have to learn to be more technicians than artists.
Oh, that doesn't sound too good. To lose the art side of our work. Of course, there will always be a technical part of our work. Well,
I think that there is now like some opening in terms of other style, which is open through video games, and it's Alberto Mielgo. What his name? You have a lot of new project where it's like you have a realistic way of realistic character of animation and a painted effects. Or it's brush strokes, or it's like this kind of effects like in comics or everything, which is like really artistic actually.
Yeah.
And I can see that more and more projects are raising to do this kind of things, which half anime, half realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where things that we have the possibility, like it's a possible way for texture actually to do more artistic things.
Myriam, are you the world's best texture artist?
No. 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 No.
Who is?
It's complicated. There is a lot of people that I know that are so talented, but they are, for different reasons
Sure.
and with different strengths. So I don't think there is one best. There is really, really great people, great texture artists, but there is not one best, no. I mean, it's difficult because just in my department, I have at least 3 person on the like at top of my head. I can tell you they are the best texture artists I ever met. But at the same time, I met other people in other company who are the best texture artists that I ever met. So it's I think it's yeah.
Of course, it's an unfair question. It's like asking who is the world's best artist? Is it Van Gogh or is it Monet or is it Rembrandt? You can never answer that question.
And you can never answer that neither because there is a big part of luck. There is a huge part of luck. You have probably great texture artists, like extremely talented texture artists. We never had the chance to work on a movie, on a big piece,
You're absolutely right. If you don't have that, you can never express what you have inside of you to that level.
Luck. What is luck? Good luck is just random events outside of your control that work out in your favor. Bad luck? The opposite. Luck has an enormous effect on the career of a professional artist. Let me explain. If you're in the gym and you're starting out, you will need the 10-pound weights to do your exercises. The 40-pound weights are way too heavy for you to be able to lift, in a controlled fashion, so they are really of no use to you. Eventually, the 10-pound weights do nothing to challenge you anymore, so you stop growing and benefiting from that exercise. You need to move to the 20-pound weights, and so on and so forth. Artistic progression is in many ways similar to that gym scenario. Let's say you go to the gym and you have long since stopped being challenged by the 20-pound weights, but there are no 30-pound weights available. Then your growth will slow down dramatically or even stall out. How do we illustrate this? What are the 10-pound weights? Like doing background buildings? Maybe that's not fair because some buildings are hero assets in their own right, but just bear with me. First time you do a building, it may look awful or barely passable. But after 10 buildings, you should have a decent idea of what makes or breaks such an asset and where to save time and where to put your emphasis. So your ability with buildings have now massively increased after 10 reps. They're challenging you and you're learning so much. After 100 reps with buildings, your growth now slows down. You can now do perfect buildings, but they no longer represent a challenge for you. Doing another 1,000 buildings at this point will not really increase your ability with buildings enormously. What's the next step? Well, all texturing, regardless of asset type, relies on understanding of colors, reflections, bumpiness, and how and why details are distributed. Doing any kind of asset will train you in those general ideas and develop your eye, that is, your ability to see with intent of understanding and eventually recreating what you see. But apart from that, it's not like one asset type leads smoothly onto the next asset type. Sure, if you've done some photo projection on simpler shapes like buildings, you'll probably find photo projection onto more complex organic shapes like digidoubles easier than a person who has no experience with photo projections at all. But that's that. So you may be an expert building artist, but that doesn't translate to being, let's say, a mid-level creature artist. An expert building artist will be a beginner creature artist. So once you mastered that 10-pound weight, how do you then make the jump to the next weight and the next? If a studio is hiring for fantasy creature work and you have 100 years of doing vehicles, it doesn't translate. So unless they're desperate and there literally are no other candidates, I don't see you getting that job. So how can you then make the jump to the next asset type? Well, once inside a studio where you are a known and trusted commodity, it's a lot easier to be given that chance to use the 20-pound weights of the gym, so to speak. But then again, that is completely random. Because it's not the concern of the studio what asset type you need for the next level of your artistic development. They're in the business of making money. That's their guiding light. So you may be in the gym, so to speak, but you may have to wait a long time before that 20 or 30-pound weight becomes available, which you need to take you from your 10-pound weight to the next level. Some of these types of assets, or weights in our little word picture here, only comes around very rarely. Because Chris Nichols did Thanos in Avengers, in my mind, he's constantly doing sweet biceps curls with that 100-pound weight. But if you listen to what he said in episode 4, most of his time is spent doing ingest, which is not even the 10-pound weight of the gym. Or maybe that weight you'd like, it just never becomes available, and you will do 1 million buildings over the course of your career, and that's that. Getting that chance to prove what you can in terms of a particular asset type is to a large degree very much down to luck. And when that next weight becomes available, it might be way heavier than what you can lift at all. That represents another problem. You may want to move into creature work, and so you need an entry-level creature asset to learn the ropes on. But if a hero-level creature is the next available weight in the gym, that will do you no good. For example, if you're working out with 10-pound weights and you're now forced to use a 100-pound weight, you'll injure yourself. Let me illustrate. Let's go back to the beginning of my career. I started as a runner and progressed to a junior texture artist in that same studio. Great. That got me in through the doors of the gym and access to those 10-pound weights, so to speak. But that studio went bankrupt. Man, visual effects. So with just a few months of professional texturing under my belt, I hit the streets trying to find that second gig. I ended up getting offers from 2 of the biggest studios in London and probably the world at that time. As an untested beginner, that was no mean feat. I picked one of those and eventually started on a promising show. My first asset was very much that familiar 10-pound weight. My second asset was very much not. As a beginner, naive as I was flattered to be trusted with a really complicated asset. Today, after 13 years of texturing, I'd laugh at it, no sweat. But in my infancy as an artist, there was just no way I could lift that weight. It crushed me. So that's like jumping from the 10-pound weight to the 100-pound weight. And as days become weeks and seemingly no progress to finalization is made on the asset, eventually the plug is pulled by production. To my knowledge, they're not concerned about the progression of an artist's development. You are one unit of artist in a spreadsheet, and that is expected to produce X amount of assets over Y amount of time. I have had artists under my care where, due to scheduling circumstances outside of my control, I've had to assign them an asset a fair bit out of their reach. And similarly, I have seen the signs of them starting to break under that strain. So you have to watch, guide, and support them carefully through lifting that weight that is unnaturally heavy for their current level of development. And then it can be a successful experience for them. But in reality, a lot of leads are not all that concerned about such things. Why was I, as a very junior artist, assigned that asset? I don't know. Nobody asks you, would you like this asset? I suppose all the easier assets were already assigned to other artists who arrived before me. In my experience, the assignment of assets, although immensely consequential for your personal development, in reality it can be incredibly random. As Mr. Thanos, Chris Nichols, was explaining in episode 4 of our conversation, we as artists may differentiate between an artist with the sensibilities for this type of asset or that. But to other parts of the organization, such as recruitment or production, you're not seen that way. You're just one unit of artist from discipline X and are expected to perform Y units in terms of productivity over time. The reality is, of course, far more nuanced, particularly when tight deadlines are involved. Theoretically, given enough time, every artist eventually can finish any type of asset. But time, that is one thing we don't have in the professional world. There are, of course, more nuances still in that whole scenario, which could be interesting to tackle in their own right. Getting fired from that, my second job, was enormously traumatic. When I started that job, I thought I won the lottery. A few months later, I'm out on the street. It took me a really long time to find my third gig. Time that was spent feeling like, an absolute failure. Doubting I was ever good enough to be an artist. That stuff leaves permanent mental scars. And in many ways, you could say my artistic development was set back, just as injuring yourself with far too heavy weights would do in the gym. So many sliding door moments in that chain of events, which you mull over endlessly for the rest of your life. Could I have done this? Could I have done that? But as frustrating as it is, it came down to luck, random events, being in the right place at the wrong time. These random elements outside of our control plays a massive role in whether we are stuck at a certain level, whether we suffer setbacks, delays, or whether the lights are all green and we're just zooming through inner city traffic. For the beginner, you see everything in terms of talent, or who is good and who is bad, or who is better than so-and-so. An experienced artist like Myriam, who is incredibly good, that experience has also taught her that there are many other things that play into this, apart from what you can influence yourself, which is very gracious of her. But hey, isn't that the Myriam we've come to know and love? In addition to her artistic talent, that humanity really sets her apart.
Exactly. And see already, like, even when you work on a big piece, you are known in the tight world of the small world of texture, or maybe if you're lucky in VFX in general, but most of the time it's not the case. Apart if you are like people who were like rewarded at the VS award and everybody knows you because you did like this kind of big stuff and everything like this. But there are a lot of talented artists who didn't have this opportunity.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's impossible to say. That's the thing.
I'm obsessed with this question of artistic development.
Yeah.
What does the life of an artist look like from childhood all the way to mastery and finally death? And part of that is if your chosen discipline is texture art. So then I want to know, what do the steps look like, the steps in the development? Like I say, it's an unfair question to ask you. But I once asked people this, and somebody said to me, talk to the dragon lady.
Okay. Somebody. The dragon lady doesn't know neither. The dragon lady is like, I mean, there is the grass is always greener on the other side.
Of course.
As there's always people that I'm like, what? How they did that? Like, how? How? It would be so different if I would have done, like but like in a good way. Like it's so different of what I like. You don't know how people like think, but most of the time it's people who are artists on their own time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, there's always one constant is that there are people who are painting, drawing, do their own stuff on their own time.
Yeah.
Different things. We're not doing texture or ZBrush or whatever. No, we are drawing, painting, looking for other stuff. I have one who do like very realistic birds, like in reality painting, in oil. One who's taking photos. One who is doing illustration, a little like Japanese, a little bit surrealist. Like everybody is doing, but it's a constant.
Yeah.
They are all doing their own thing on apart work.
This is not the first time I've heard this. And listening to this podcast, The Naked Text Artist, neither would it be for you. Chris, Adam, Jamie, Myriam, so many of my guests have said this about having an art practice on the side. About how that brings out unique angles to you as an artist. Or is it that the brilliant artists all do this already? The chicken or the egg? Either way, this is important. There are many angles to this. Certainly it will help you get to those proverbial 10,000 hours sooner, which Malcolm Gladwell speculated it takes to reach mastery. And in a hitherto unpublished part of my conversation with Chris Nichols, he points out that it also helps keep you grounded regardless of what happens in your work life. Sort of like an anchor, that work may be tossing you back and forth like a storm, but when you have something else in your art life, it just keeps you sane. I think all of these points are absolutely correct. The challenge is when you spend all day in the restaurant kitchen, maybe you're sick of the smell of food when you come back home. So you order takeout instead of cooking up all your personal culinary ambitions. So I personally do have an artistic practice outside of work and lots of ambitions besides in various avenues of art, which I could never fulfill inside of my visual effects career. But I struggle to find enough time and energy for it on a regular basis. So this remains a guilty conscience for me, something I keep trying to get to a better place. I think the bottom line will always be, and has to be, that whether we're paid money for it or not, we're still artists, which means we want to flex that and keep growing and developing that regardless.
Have you ever had an asset that broke you?
Yes.
An asset that it's like if I'm asking a baby to lift a 100-pound weight.
Yeah.
No matter how motivated the baby is, it will never do it.
No.
It will break itself doing, Have you ever been in that situation where you had, for various reasons, maybe it was complicated asset, it was short time, it was other things, and you just couldn't, this asset, it was going to be you or the asset, one of them will have to die?
No. Not the asset itself. Because
Okay.
I'm first I always personalize my asset. They start to be my babies. They have their own life by themselves. So there is nothing negative that I associate. But I break inside by the external politic and pressure.
Okay. How did you handle that? Did you break, or did you somehow manage to escape or
No,
solve it, or
I break inside and I left.
okay,
I finish the job. I finish it because it was like no way, and other people depending on me. So you don't want you have to stay strong, even if inside you're like, oh, literally
yeah.
crumbling under questions, torture.
Did you carry that scar inside of you for a long time, or did you manage to rebuild yourself, so to speak? You were all, as you said, blah blah blah. You're all a mess inside afterwards. How did you rebuild yourself?
I rebuilt myself when I went to by going somewhere else. Was a very That's why I speak about it very fondly, even if it was a short time. I healed myself in ILM by being surrounded by very talented people who didn't.
I love that story. I just love it. It sounds like it was a pilgrimage.
Yeah, exactly. It was a pilgrimage, but I feel so grateful to all of them, really, because it was really I was really broken when I arrived there, and but I focus on my job and I learned to love my job again there. Calmly relax, and I was coming back home and I was writing my comic. I got the time for that. Before I didn't have to have the time to do nothing apart working like crazy person and not sleeping. Basically. So suddenly it was like I rebuilt myself like that, basically to manage, like I have such a great management of time, and I was so relaxed about, doing my job and just my job and being really surrounded by people who were very relaxed to do their job as well, that I could function it again to actually to start, my big project for me, which I didn't do for many, many years.
It's a fascinating thing that this work that we do can both be poison or destructive for us, but it can also be healing for us.
Yeah, it's yes, exactly. It's I like I associate like so because the dragon. So it's I associate like to the phoenix. You burn yourself to ashes, and you
Yeah,
reborn from your ashes,
yeah.
and you learn from your mistake, and you learn from that, and you reborn again.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It was a very, very difficult, dark time, really.
Hmm.
And because of work, and that's where you are like, that's not right. That shouldn't be that. I mean, my work is what I like to do. It's I shouldn't associate stuff that are not right for me, that can break my mind. But it has nothing to do with work. Again, it was like the whole surroundings, the hierarchy, the political things,
But that's what
tugging
that's what we were talking
you.
about in the beginning. With what is the good gig? The work does not exist in a bubble. It is surrounded by all of these other things.
Yes, that's it. And each time when that's like when you ask me about like a good gig, like there is gigs that I'm like, oh, that would be awesome, and that's something that I was expecting to do, and it's a crash course, literally, psychologically, because you didn't see the whole surrounding and the political surrounding and the ego of lot of suddenly you are surrounded by different egos, and you didn't realize that you have the job that everybody want to have a little bit a part of it, and you don't realize it already because you just saw the challenge. Oh, awesome. Let's do it as a team. And you're like, whoa.
When you're in that dark place,
Yeah.
how do you talk to yourself? How do you talk to yourself to get through it?
I numb myself. I numb myself. I was
So you try not to feel, not to
No,
think,
because
not to.
again, the thing is
Okay.
that I want to insist on that. It just when on my own, I will have probably crashed,
Yeah.
probably, or maybe not because I'm full of pride. So probably not. But I don't know. But the one thing that keeps me going is that I've got a team depending on me. Not on me exactly, but me to try to protect them so they can do their job. So, yeah.
So a sense of responsibility or duty.
Well, it was thanks to them actually, because I could have it could have been way worse, but because you feel so you feel so loyal to your team, and you feel like that they don't deserve that, or like they just deserve to do their job and enjoy it because they do a great job. So somehow it kind of saved me. It makes me stronger when other people, are kind of in danger, if it makes sense. Not in danger, but you know what I mean. Are in.
Well, this is what we were talking about, the strength of Ripley and the strength of Sarah Connor.
Yeah,
I think they're only strong because they have somebody to protect.
Yes, exactly. They couldn't protect you. Can't protect yourself for the life of you. But when it's other people that are you suddenly you have this extra push of adrenaline to say, okay, I can't break because I can't let them down. That's the thing.
What do you like best? Do you like best having a team where you're the lead or the supervisor of some sort, or do you like best working on your own under a lead or a supervisor?
I prefer to work on my own.
Yeah.
No.
I've also found this, that if you're given supervision of a team or something, all of a sudden you get to do less of what I enjoy, which is making cool art pieces.
Exactly.
I'm running around helping everybody else and doing very little actual art.
I'm doing tons of meetings.
Yes. Oh.
Meeting to do a meeting. You're like, what the fuck? Where did you get all this time to do? How you do movie? How is that possible? No, seriously, it's insane, and I hated it. I hated to be. I like the fact that I work in a team. I love this work, but I don't want to be in charge because I hate meetings.
Yeah, meetings. Just every meeting just takes a little bit more life out of you until there's no more. Yeah,
exactly. They're like, oh, no, and everybody has an opinion, and that's awesome, and that's great, that's awesome. But meanwhile, you are not doing the work, and that's the crazy thing is that they speak about well, you should have done that already, and you are like, I'm half of the day, and when I say half of the day, I'm nice with you guys, not on my computer doing stuff with you.
Yeah.
So it's very funny how it's still not registered at tech. They don't take in account that incompressible time of not working, being on meeting. They don't take it in account. It's like it doesn't exist, which is super wrong because
if you're looking at our industry, just all of it, is there anything, if you could have a magic wish, anything you want to change, if you could just pick one thing
in the industry?
Yeah. I think you have something there.
Yeah. I will take half of the pyramidal hierarchy of every company and tell them to do something else with their life.
Myriam will be back in a future episode.
Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. We have a tiny bit of housekeeping to do on the way out. If this episode has been helpful to you, why not share the podcast with your colleagues and friends? If you'd like to support the podcast, I'd appreciate if you bought me a coffee. You can do that on Ko-fi. That is spelled ko-fi.com/The Naked Texture Artist. One word. If you have suggestions, comments, or questions, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to drop me a line on thenakedtextureartist@gmail.com. gmail.com. That is the Naked Texture Artist written out in all one word at gmail.com. As I mentioned, having a busy day job in visual effects means my release schedule for this podcast can be a bit irregular. So if you don't want to miss out, subscribe to the Naked Texture Artist wherever you get your podcasts. Or follow the podcast on the socials, then you'll be alerted when the next episode drops. The music in this episode was Awake by Tycho. Nick Sifoni helped put the sound together, and everything else was done by me, your host, Mark Pierre Sondergaard. Speak to you soon.